Hi, I wanted to come on and explain just a little bit more about what I do and just my background. So, if you don't know me, I'm Sandy Scheschuk. I'm an intuitive as well as a medium and a channeler. And so, when we talk about an intuitive, what does that mean? It just means I have the ability to tune into and read the energy of really anything, any person, place, or thing, with the idea that everything is energy. And this is similar to the term psychic. I just don't use the word psychic because I find that it carries a lot of baggage. People assume we're talking about fortune telling and things like that, whereas the intuitive readings that I do, while we might look at some future directions of things, that's not the primary goal of what I do. I find that it's more helpful to more just be a mirror to what you're not seeing, and to kind of reflect that back to you. So looking at beliefs and things like that, or even past experiences that prevent you from moving forward or understanding or having clarity in your life. Really, what I see my role as an intuitive is to help you navigate your life to your highest and best potential. So that's kind of, I guess, the difference between maybe intuitive versus psychic. I also do evidential mediumship. As you know, mediumship is the idea that we're connecting to recognizable loved ones in spirit. The evidential part is that I'm not just going to tell you that I've got your grandma here and she loves you. I'm going to bring through very specific details about this loved one in spirit so that A, you would recognize who they are, because we never know who's going to come through. It doesn't always end up being the person we're intending, but I do set the intention that that whoever does come through is for your highest and best good. But also that they bring through just very specific things, like details about like shared experiences, maybe something they used to do, things they loved, even how they looked like, lessons they learned in their life. Just so much comes through that is so validating for the client to realize that their loved one really is there communicating through me to them. And then also I do channeling, and with that, I'm mostly connecting to my guides that are a group of light beings, and they bring through wisdom. I can use the channeling abilities to also connect with spirits and things like that that are recognizable. But I guess the main difference is that instead of going through my filter and translating things, I'm just directly saying the words that they're giving me without knowing where it's going or what the overall message is. So that's kind of the difference in terms of how it comes through for me. I guess they would consider me a conscious channeler in that I'm not like overtaken by spirit's energy. I'm just being given word for word what they want me to say, kind of like a teleprompter. And I can also type what they're sharing with me as well. So they call that more written channeling. And so what led me to this path? A lot of people ask me this. So I definitely had a lot of spiritual events occur growing up. And this led to a lot of curiosity towards this subject. Some of the events include having just premonitions about certain things happening. Another event where I heard like a voice coming out of the right side of my head saying, don't go, don't go, as if it was like yelling at me. And that was before getting into a car that would then later get in a car accident. I chose not to go. This was so alarming to me. But from that point forward, I got real curious about what that was, what that voice was, where it was coming from. I did grow up with a Christian background. However, I don't feel that like religion really prepares one to understand how to receive God's communication back or spirit communication back, or what is intuitive, what's our higher self, just even divine guidance. We're not really, at least from my experience, I didn't really learn what that might look like to receive. We certainly know and learn how to pray and ask for things, but not how to receive. I was a bit lost in terms of understanding that, but I did find my way through a lot of spiritual books and meeting different spiritual teachers and things like that along the way. And one of the spiritual teachers that I met along the way while I was doing life coaching was sort of a psychic first, then trained to do life coaching. just to help clients work through and move forward from the insights that were revealed during the psychic reading. So before meeting her, I don't think I ever knew that you could develop your own intuitive gifts or psychic gifts or any extra perception. I wasn't aware that you could do that until meeting her. And of course, I had my doubts when I met her about whether I would be the one that probably wouldn't get it. I had that feeling like, okay, have you ever had anyone who couldn't do this? So I was asking all of those questions because I was quite doubtful that I would be able to do it. Not that, and I certainly was coming from a place where I wanted to develop the intuitive abilities, would be more directed by myself instead of happening haphazardly, which is what was happening up until then. So prior to meeting this intuitive teacher, I didn't really have the ability to reliably call on my own intuition in the everyday moments. And I could see that it was certainly very valuable in my life. It was really never wrong as I looked back on all these intuitive experiences I'd had. So I wanted to learn more, and this teacher was offering an ability to cultivate your intuitive abilities so that you could use it in the everyday. And so that was my main reason for wanting to learn how to read energy and kind of start in developing my intuition through this teacher and these classes. But quickly she would have you start reading other people in the class that you didn't know so that you could differentiate what was intuitive information versus what you just imagined. It turns out it's actually a lot easier in the beginning of learning how to read energy. It's actually a lot easier to read for other people, places or things that you know nothing about than it is, and at least have something there to validate against, than it is reading yourself, because we know ourselves so well and we might dismiss what is intuitive as something we just came up with, imagined, or surmised. Or things that we already knew. So that's kind of what ends up happening through those classes. And I quickly learned that I could do this for other people, and I loved helping people in that way. Another thing that shaped my path towards what I'm doing now is my dad's passing. And this happened in March 2020. And shortly after his passing, I had some experiences where I was communicating with him in spirit. And even as I was slightly doubtful that this was really happening, I asked him to give me a sign that this was real, and not just imagined. And I got the sensation of being tapped on the right shoulder and then tapped on the left shoulder multiple times. And so from that point forward, really had an understanding that this is kind of how mediumship works for me, or how communicating with spirits works for me. And I did seek to just hone those abilities a bit more through mediumship classes. And also learned through the experience of my dad's passing of just how valuable and healing mediumship readings can be. There was a lot of confusion leading to my dad's downward spiral, and just had a lot of questions that were unanswered. And this reading that I was given through a very skilled medium, even though I was able to connect with him myself, just even working through another medium helped kind of dissolve any of the doubt that comes through the mind and bring through some information that was really valuable to me. He was able to share his perspective of what happened and why, and really helped me just kind of come to a sense of closure and acceptance of what has happened. It's been super valuable having him in spirit. He's been somewhat of a spiritual teacher for me, and so it's a really special connection. So anyway, after that experience, it's something I would love to give to other people and love doing for other people. What is the purpose of mediumship? One of the main reasons for getting a mediumship reading is increasing your faith, or having proof of life after death, that life goes on after the physical body passes away. This can be, even if we have the strongest of faith in the afterlife, just having this in your face evidence can be life-changing and mind-blowing. So that feeling just honestly never gets old. There's also the benefit of getting some healing and closure, like I mentioned with my dad. Sometimes Spirits come through with apologies. Sometimes they come through with encouragement. Sometimes they come through with messages that are just very much needed by the loved ones. And it also, lastly, just affirms that your loved ones are in spirit with you. They're with you. They never leave you. They might not be in a physical body, but they are still very much with you. And of course, they can, from their higher spiritual perspective, share some guidance that can help you navigate your way towards your highest and best potential. And another topic I wanted to go over is, how is mediumship possible? So I will shift into a slower brainwave state that's more receptive to energetic communication. This connects me to my subconscious brain, which is where I'm just observing. I'm just more the observer, and I'm receiving impressions from the spirit world, your higher self, wherever you set your intention. And with that, intention is the key to your experience when in this lower brainwave state. So if we set the intention to connect with grandma, most likely that's what's going to happen. If we set the connection to connect with your spirit guides, most likely that's what's going to happen. If we set the intention to connect with your higher self, most likely that's what's going to happen. And I would say most likely because sometimes things happen that are still for your highest good, but maybe it's something better that's coming through. So that's a little bit about like where the intention comes into play. Intention is the target. You're just setting the target or the goal, and that becomes what attracts the specific energy that you're wanting to attract. So being a medium is just kind of like being a translator for spiritual communication or energetic communication. And so we're just really tuning into this energetic realm that's kind of beyond our five senses here. Lastly, I like to say that anyone can actually develop mediumship, but not all of us will be masters at it. So just like any skill, it can be taught, developed. We can all learn golf. We can all like take lessons, learn how to do it. But in the end, we're not all going to be Tiger Woods, right? So some people have a more natural inclination, natural ability, and also the amount of time and effort spent working at it will also help you develop more. And then another topic I wanted to go through is how I work. Okay, so I have, and all mediums have, sort of these extrasensory perceptions, and we call these the clairs. So some mediums work with very specific clairs. Maybe they only have one that's super strong and the rest not so much. For me, I work with most all of my clairs. I would say some of my two strongest clairs are my clairvoyance and my clairaudience. So clairvoyance is just seeing imagery or like movies in your mind's eye. So if you could imagine in your mind's eye a red rose right now, just imagine what that looks like. That is exactly how the images show up in my mind. Only the difference is I'm not putting it there. I'm not putting it up on my screen. Spirit is putting it up on my screen. And so with the imagery that shows up in a reading, that can be metaphorical or it can be literal. I never know. So I do share just as objectively as possible what I'm seeing to the client. And then the client responses help us figure out what Spirit's trying to say. So for example, I might explain what this person looked like, and they're presenting a red rose, and she feels like an aunt to me, and the person might say, "Oh, that's my Aunt Rose," right? So they're putting those pieces together. When I saw the red rose, I don't know that that's her name, but the client will help put that together. So that's why I say it's helpful for the client to respond with either putting the pieces together or say, okay, yes, that makes sense, or I'm not sure, or no, I'm not sure what you mean. That way I can go back and ask Spirit what they're trying to present in a different way. And then we'll get different things. And then my clairaudience, that's a little bit more literal. I will just hear words and phrases come through and I'll just share those. And interestingly, even though I have clairaudience, they don't use that for everything. They don't use clairaudience to communicate everything about themselves, which sometimes I wish they would, but they don't. But I definitely receive messages clairaudiently most of the time. And then last, clairsentience is another way that I can receive spirit communication. So with this, a spirit will convey emotions on me. And so if you were in a reading with me and you saw me have an emotional expression on my face or see emotion come over me, just know that that is not me reacting to what is coming through. That's just spirit impressing these emotions on me. They'll also impress upon me physical sensations, sometimes for physical ailments or sometimes just to let me know where they are. Um, and then there's claircognizance, which is just a knowing. And sometimes that's just paired with a lot of the stuff that just helps me understand what they're trying to convey. So it's a bit like charades, and it's a fun process to work with the client on putting the pieces together of what they're trying to communicate. But it's really a beautiful experience. And if And the next topic I wanted to cover is just what to expect in a reading. So we would meet over Zoom or in person. And I just want to share briefly that meeting over Zoom or in person, I don't experience one or the other being stronger than the other. It's just about, whether it's more appropriate to meet in person or meet over Zoom due to scheduling and location. But yeah, like I said, either spirit energy knows no distance, so distance is not a problem. And what I'll do generally is I'll explain briefly just about the process of the reading, just how I work in general, like some of the things we just talked about, and we'll set the intentions for the reading. Sometimes the clients want to connect with a specific person in spirit, and so we'll just set that intention to do so. And sometimes people just want to leave it open, and that's great too. And so I will also set the intention that just the spirit come through, that they would recognize, and that the spirit would share evidential details about themselves that the client would recognize, and that they would also share any messages that are helpful and healing and for the client's highest good. And I would then just center my energy. You'll see me close my eyes, take some deep breaths. This helps me shift into that slower brainwave state. And then once I start kind of opening it up, I'll start verbally sharing what impressions I'm getting. And usually the spirit usually shows kind of an image of what they looked like in life. And so I'll start just sharing some physical details of what they look like, or at least what the spirit is showing they look like. And then they'll kind of reveal more details about themselves, and we'll just check in with you as the client to see if you recognize who this is, and just kind of going off of your responses to whether I need to clarify with spirit or things like that. Sometimes I do find that spirit will compare and contrast themselves with the client, or sometimes they'll start with imagery that ties in at the end with a message, which is really beautiful. I really never know how the reading's going to unfold, but every time it's amazing to me, amazing to the client, and helpful and healing. So I love being the witness to that. And then at the end, if messages haven't already come through, we'll make sure that spirit has a chance to do that. I'll also give the client an opportunity to ask any questions, either to the spirit that we have right there or to their spirit guides. And then we'll just kind of wrap it up. And kind of in the wrap up phase, that's where we get a little bit more detailed feedback from the client on what spirit brought through and what made sense, what resonated, why it made sense, all that kind of thing. It's kind of like the backstory time during the reading. So anyway, that's usually the reading. I can record these sessions so you can have them. Also, Zoom has been doing a great thing lately where they'll do transcripts or summaries of these sessions, which I think is actually kind of helpful. So I'll kind of send those off along with the recordings. And it's also helpful to take notes. But yeah, that's what the overall experience is. So that's just a little bit about me and what doing a mediumship reading with me is like. And if you're curious to experience for yourself what a mediumship reading is like, I would love if you would sign up for one on my website. Or if you're seeking another medium, I just recommend that you look at a medium's reviews or even go by word of mouth. That can be a great way to find great mediums in your area. And thanks again for watching, and please follow or subscribe if you liked this video and want to see more. I'll see you next time. Thank you.